All right, carnivores, so welcome to the third video on the Carnivore Kurt channel. I'm really happy to have you here. If you've been following me, you've probably seen me talk about nose to tail, what a carnivore diet is. On this video, we're actually gonna talk about if this diet is actually dangerous. I think the main thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go over the four key kind of components I think are most top of mind for most people when they think about a carnivore diet. When you think about it, and when I think about it, when I ask my friends and my family and people around, and I tried to kind of go back to almost a year now of when I first started the carnivore diet, I want to think about what are my fears. And initially, when I did this video, it was like a 30-minute video, and I went through all of these like micronutrients, vitamin C, folate, riboflavin, calcium, and what I found was that it just was way too long, and I needed to go shorter and higher level and just hit on some of these main points. So in this video, we're gonna keep it kind of tight, and in the future, I'm gonna go into a few more of these points. But for this video, we're really just gonna jump into some of these main things that I wanna talk about, and then we will dive much deeper in a future set of videos as we go further down the rabbit hole on the carnivore diet. So let's just jump into it. What are some of the biggest concerns? There's a few things I think personally that mimic what you would think of when you think about a carnivore diet being dangerous. And two big ones that come out right off the bat to me are cholesterol and fat. When you think about this diet, it's a keto diet. We talked about in the last video going nose to tail. And so the diet is really focused on ketogenic, meaning that your fat macros, the fat you eat, the amount of fat you're gonna eat in this diet is going to be 70 to 80% of your fat intake. And when you think about that, and you think about the traditional understanding around what a healthy diet is, it can fly in the face of conventional understanding and conventional speak around health. For years, society has been preaching this idea that high fat, high cholesterol in your diet is really bad for your heart health. And if you've been following that, it's certainly a valid thing to consider. There are a lot of articles out there if you scour the web, there's a lot of forums out there, and frankly, there's a lot of correlation between people who are fat, who maybe eat a fat-heavy diet, and who have heart disease. But here's the thing, the war on fat has been something that we have pretty much put to bed the last decade and a half or two. We looked at studies decades ago that correlated with individuals who ate bacon, who ate red meat, who had high levels of heart disease. And we immediately jumped to the conclusion that these people with their high cholesterol levels and their high triglycerides were essentially getting the heart disease from the fat that they were eating and the cholesterol they were eating. After looking at the science and doing a lot of the deep dives and looking at studies now that have been done, we know for a fact that eating cholesterol and eating saturated fat in and of itself does not correlate with heart disease. It does not contribute to a heart disease issue. So you can put that to bed. You can go dive in and do a lot more research. And if you want to talk more about it, we can kind of have a discussion in the comments and decide if we want to go deeper into a future video. But for the purposes of this discussion, a high intake of fat in your diet does not make you a fat person. And you can see all of the examples of a ketogenic story out there on the web. People who go keto, which is basically a fat-based diet, heavy in fat, 70, 80, 90% fat, they lose weight, their body composition transforms, and they actually become leaner. They become healthier. So that just does not correlate and actually register as a cause for heart disease. The second point is cholesterol. You're eating a ton of cholesterol. I personally eat probably 4 to 5 egg yolks a day. And when you look at the dietary cholesterol intake and you look at the way we've looked at cholesterol historically, cholesterol has been demonized as this terrible thing that correlates very much with an unhealthy lifestyle. And it's interesting because it probably makes sense that we would think that. When you look at people who have plaque buildup in their arterial walls and coronary heart disease, you see high cholesterol. We have sort of created this tendency or this belief in society that cholesterol at a high level is super dangerous for our health. When it's not lowered, can lead to heart disease. But what we haven't looked at is the bigger picture, and that is the inflammation. We are sort of looking at this and now seeing, okay, well, cholesterol actually exists in our body in every single cell membrane. It's a critical part of hormones, of fat soluble vitamins, of the cell membrane walls in your body. And in fact, your liver produces cholesterol if you don't eat it. So why on earth would this molecule of cholesterol be so damaging to us if we actually have it in our body, in almost everything that exists in our body, and our bodies produce it when we don't actually eat it? It just doesn't make a lot of consistent sense to think that that's the case. And on top of that, if you removed your cholesterol to nothing, you would actually have even more of a probably health risk than having a really high cholesterol. Personally, and I'll put my results up here, my cholesterol is over 300. And I'm clearly not someone who's overweight. When you look at the research and you look at the details, actually what you find is that cholesterol may not be the real demon it's cracked up to be. It's actually probably more likely that cholesterol is correlated, not the cause of heart disease. And actually cholesterol is rushing to the scene of the fire as firemen. And really what's causing the fire, the arsonist, is insulin resistance, inflammation, probably these things that we see with people who eat the standard American diet, who eat a high carbohydrate, high sugar, high refined food, processed foods diet, and have high markers of inflammation in their diet. It's in those situations that we see cholesterol ushering to the points in their body to essentially repair and support what's going on in the arterial walls of the body. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. Obviously, I'm not suggesting you should take my advice over your doctor's advice. But what I am saying is if you do a bit of reading and research and you look at the whole picture, cholesterol is typically a pretty high range for most people on a ketogenic diet. And if you're doing carnivore and you're doing it as a nose to tail approach, where we're really looking to do a carnivore keto approach, you're gonna have high cholesterol. So that being said, if you're worried about high cholesterol and heart disease, there are a couple things you can check. One, and again, this is only for entertainment purposes, please go see your doctor to get real medical advice. But one, you can look at your triglycerides. And the idea here is that triglycerides are fat molecules in your bloodstream, and when they're elevated, meaning they're higher levels of triglycerides in the concentration of blood, when you get it drawn in a fasted state, you see higher amounts of triglycerides. And that can correlate with a cause of more inflammation, with more insulin resistance, which can be what we think is actually the real cause of this heart disease we're talking about. So look at your triglycerides. In my case, I think my last test, they were below 60, which is phenomenal.
For the fourth time, the United States of America.
Another clear marker that's been tested and proven to kind of see where you are with your heart health and your overall cardiovascular is your weight to height ratio. You can actually measure your height in total inches and measure your waist in total inches and take your waist and divide it by your height. So for me, I'm 5'8", that's 68 inches. I am 28-inch waist. Again, measuring your waist, you're not measuring it where your pants hang below your belly button. You measure at the belly button in a natural position and you wrap around that point. And when you measure that, the ratio, if it's below 0.5, you're in good shape. If it's above 0.5, 0.5, you are at a higher risk, and you want to see what you can do to sort of reduce that waist subcutaneous fat and reduce that ratio. The last thing I'll mention about this whole thing about fat and cholesterol and inflammation, heart disease and all that is that you can look at inflammation markers. You can look at your C-reactive protein. You can look at your hemoglobin, fasting blood hemoglobin levels, your A1C. And there's a lot of things your doctor can do to pull those labs from your blood to see what those markers are. And from there you can see, oh, hey, my levels are elevated. This is not good. There's actually some genuine concern here. Or these levels look phenomenal and maybe I'm just in great shape and I have high cholesterol, and that's a good thing. I'm moving a lot more fat through my body because that's my primary source of fuel, and it's just It's just that this is the way the body is operating in this type of diet. So that moves us to the next point, number 3, which is micronutrient deficiencies. So there's this huge fear that if you don't eat green leafy vegetables, you're not gonna get your folate. If you don't eat carrots, you're not gonna get your beta carotene. And then you're gonna not have vitamin A, a precursor for vitamin A, and you're not gonna have all these great nutrients that you would get from plants. But here's the thing, and I'm gonna back up real quick and talk about the operating system for a second and use this sort of principle that my good friend and personal doctor, Dr. Paul Saladino, uses in his conversations, and that is humans and plants aren't the same operating system. When you think about the bioavailability of the nutrients you get from plants, it's not as available. They come with a lot of residue. When you think about humans in animals, like beef, cattle, lamb, chicken, we're actually quite a bit more similar biologically. We all have livers, we're vertebrates, we have muscles. There's just more components in our body molecularly that are similar. And so when we talk about nutrient deficiencies, it's crazy, but there's this belief that the plants are so important nutritionally, and that if you don't eat them, you're missing all these things. But from the standpoint of the operating system, when we're eating an animal-based diet, we're actually eating all of the components that are in our bodies. We're getting collagen from the connective tissue in the muscle meat. We're getting protein from the muscle fibers, literally the fibers we're eating in the muscle meat. We're getting a lot of the enzymes and vitamins and nutrients we need from the liver, because the liver is such a big piece of our body and our nutritional breakdown when we think about the gateway between what we eat and our bloodstream. So again, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about it, but when you think about that and you think about the operating system of human beings compared to animals versus plants and where the nutrition is in these organisms, these plants or these animals that we're eating, it kind of makes sense that eating an animal from nose to tail, which again, if you didn't see my last video on the 6 keys to doing carnivore, I highly recommend you go check that out. You're getting basically the nutrition from a source that's very similar. That's why if you eat heart, you get CoQ10 enzyme, which is more abundant for the heart. If you eat fat, you get more fuel for your fat. If you eat the liver, you get more of the components in the liver. The other thing I'll say is people talk about variety. They're missing variety. So plants are giving us vitamins and nutrients such as vitamin C and folate, like I mentioned, vitamin A, which is the precursor would be beta carotene, potassium in avocados. We're getting that from plants and we just can't get that from animals. But that's just not true. Think about it. If your body didn't have these elements in it, you wouldn't be healthy, but you do have them in it. And so when you think about the operating system, the animals are gonna have it in their body as well. But the trick is these deficiencies can be a real situation if you don't actually eat the animal nose to tail and get those nutrients. So another model I like to use when thinking about the variety and needing to get variety of nutrients in our diet is this idea that we are sort of like an engine, okay? Our body is an engine where the human body essentially repeats and does the same sort of molecular processes to generate energy, to recycle our cells, to build new tissue, to kind of clean out old stuff. We're not an engine that's running on completely different sources of fuel. If we are eating stuff that is very similar to our body, meaning we're eating things that provide all these different nutrients from the animal and we're getting all that in our body, why would it make sense to vary up the type of gas we're putting in our car? Like you put unleaded fuel in your normal gas engine and you wouldn't put some sugar in there or some alcohol in there. It just wouldn't make sense. And so again, the idea here is that you have to tweak your diet and look at what's affecting you and what's benefiting you. And you have to make sure you're getting all of the nutrients through the nose to tail carnivore approach. But when you have it dialed in, it's not like you need to basically start putting crap back in if you're giving an engine the perfect fuel. At this point, the engine runs. It runs clean, it runs great, it runs awesome. And that's where this idea of getting a variety of things and that being more healthy can be a little misleading in my experience, and what I think is sort of like one of the common things around people thinking this diet is dangerous. So I'm gonna wrap up with one fourth point, and that is the idea that plants provide unique nutrients that you cannot get from animals, and these unique nutrients are often referred to as phytonutrients. What's crazy is if you look at the research right now, a lot of the research is very myopic. It's very focused on the benefits of these plant compounds and molecules, and it's not looking at the whole picture. So let's take a step back and talk about these phytonutrients a little further. So when we look at phytonutrients, the claims we're talking about are things that plants are bringing to our bodies in our whole molecular experience that are unique from the plants. Two of the main kind of things that are mentioned are antioxidants and hormesis. Now, antioxidants we know we get from different vitamins. Vitamin E, for example, helps with that. Our body produces things to kind of deal with oxidative stress and repair. Hormesis is this idea that when you stress your body, just like when you go to the gym and you exercise, you're actually building yourself back up resiliently. And so when we talk about things like polyphenols or things like sulforaphane or curcumin, these things are boasted for having amazing effects in a positive way. But what they don't mention is that these we're gonna call them chemicals, not nutrients, are actually damaging the body as well as benefiting the body. So the net effect may actually be quite negative. And so when you look at things like curcumin, it's been shown to damage DNA. When you look at sulforaphane, these compounds were actually produced by these plants in large part to naturally be a pesticide to insects, to other animals eating them. Plants in general don't want to be eaten. They co-evolve with us over millions of years as animals, and they develop mechanisms to prevent them from being totally eaten. If they were eaten and just completely nutritionally perfect for animals, they probably wouldn't exist, and they probably wouldn't be alive right now. We would just be eating them all off the ground until they were gone. So the idea here is that evolutionarily speaking, these phytochemicals are actually mechanisms plants have developed to keep themselves from getting overly consumed. And you can see this if you eat things like too many peppers, nightshades. Go out and eat a bunch of those and see how you feel. You'll probably get pretty sick. You'll probably have it pass right through you. If you go into the forest right now in your backyard and you start chomping on the grass and the ferns, most of that stuff is gonna make you sick. Again, a lot of the stuff you see in the supermarket is very much altered from what it was originally created as. And the phyto, quote unquote, nutrients that are claimed as the benefits are pretty limited. And there's a huge reason why the studies would be very short-sighted or focused on just the benefits when it's pushing these products, when people are selling these products. When you understand or you dig deeper into this and you look at the whole story around that, it can be pretty like eye-opening to go, oh, really? Okay. And when you start to really get into carnivore and you do the nose to tail carnivore diet, you can see pretty tremendous changes. And there's a lot of stories out there about people just seeing chronic autoimmunity reduction in certain things. And it's incredible to see it. So is the carnivore diet dangerous? Well, I would argue it's not. I would really argue that it's really not dangerous, that when you look at these things like saturated fat, high fat diets, cholesterol, those we kind of went into more detail about and talked about why those things aren't dangerous to you. When you look at the micronutrient deficiencies and you think about the operating systems of humans versus animals and how similar we are to animals and where we get things like calcium and collagen and protein and B vitamins in the animal versus how it matches our bodies. And then you look at these phytochemicals, phytonutrients, and these antioxidants, and you see the whole picture, and you try to find studies that show just how the holistic view of these and what their actual net effect is on the humans, you're probably gonna see, okay, well, maybe this diet is actually quite a bit more intriguing than it initially sounded like it might be compared to what we've conventionally thought of. So if you made it this far, let me know in the comments if there's any topics in particular around the micronutrient deficiencies you think that we should talk about in the future videos. I wanna thank you for watching this. thank you very much. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, like this video, share it with someone who's interested in the carnivore diet. Let's spread the word, let's get this out to people. Let's help others understand more about this and see the bigger picture. And if you're also intrigued and you want to follow my day-to-day, I do keep a pretty active Instagram at Carnivore Kurt. That's carnivore with a K and Kurt with a K, no dots. You can find me on Instagram. You can see stories of me posting, eating, going through my day routine, and sort of talking about other topics as I focus in and continue on this journey. So thank you very much. Appreciate you watching.